difficult to record this. Was taking a lot of effort just to set up my phone and press record. I've had quite a distressing day today and yesterday. I kind of wanted to try to record and talk yesterday, but it was just too painful, and even now it's maybe it's out of desperation to record this. What triggered it was my mum getting in touch with me. There isn't much contact at the moment, just because it has too much of an impact on my health. And it can often be like that when someone's energy is not necessarily they're doing something wrong, they're just being who they are, what they know, and that's sometimes it's not healthy to have that interaction. And the result of that is for me, it's the result of interacting with them is and I think a lot of the pain is because there's a lot unsaid, and there's a lot that just feels like can't be understood by them in regards to my health and the reason why I'm not in touch with them. And I think the levels of sensitivity in me, it just all sort of crashed, and it was just too much to absorb, to take. I managed to communicate that, what I needed in a brief message, and managed to communicate that I wouldn't be able to send any more messages just because of my health and the effect it has on me. And there's lots of mixed emotions there. There's guilt. I think there's guilt, not wanting them to be in pain and because of me, and a lot of that is not in my control. Like how they react to my lack of contact, or it's hard to deal with that pain. It's something perhaps I need to address. There's a sense of guilt. It's also painful because to try and explain and to try and understand, it's just a huge. It seems like my mind is like broken circuits. It's just not working, and I managed to journal a few thoughts. As much as I could manage, I wrote down a few thoughts, but again it was very sort of fringe. I couldn't access anything more central or connected to what I was feeling. It's just again, I've said this many times, the mind feels broken, and how can it operate? And it in order for it to understand itself, or understand the feelings, emotions going through, understand the complexity of relationships, it needs to, of course, be operating, to be working, and mine isn't, and it's having trouble reconciling with that. And I think part of that is my sanity. It feels, it's the oxygen to try and for the mind to understand its own condition, to understand what's happening with the feelings. And so when I first received the message, it was a very trivial, but it was just my birthday is coming up soon, so there's always contact, and again, I guess there's lots that I haven't managed to communicate to them, and part of that is just because I'm not well enough to articulate that. I many times have thought about writing a letter to try and explain my view on the relationship, and I've never gotten past the thought of writing a letter, as much as part of me would like to, because it feels like the other person's almost blind, or and this is part of the issue of the relationship. It's where a parent can, just by the result of their speech and their actions, that's they're not. They may be seeing things through a very narrow perspective, and also another part, it's how can somebody understand something that's happening with me that feels it's quite complex to understand, to me, to explain to somebody. They may be able to, even people who I'm in more regular contact with, even they don't understand, and it's not a fault, or there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a reality of a lot of things can go on in a mind, and how can someone fully understand that? They may get some perspective from the outside, which is like a part truth, but there's jigsaw pieces missing. And I think because of my great fragility, vulnerability, sensitivity, it was receiving the message and contact. It was like a collapse in me, a mental collapse, and a great deal of pain. It's hard to articulate. The pain wasn't just purely because of the contact by my parent. It was that, of course, as well. It was a big part, but there's also the collapse, like an earthquake, the damage of that, and affected the mind, and the mind trying to stand up and keep sane and keep I felt a great pressure on my mind, so I was kind of forced to send a reply just to help ease the relief of pain, which is, so I briefly explained, it was too stressful to see them, as they wanted to see me briefly and drop something off, and to compose that message was just extremely tough for me to do, as it was. My mind, I was all over the place and a great deal of pain. And to think of it now, the pain is very, very slowly subsiding. It's just the effect of time. My mum sent me a reply back that I very briefly glanced at the preview of it on my locked screen, but then I couldn't read it. More so just to protect myself, really. It may have been a loving message, a loving reply. I'm pretty sure it was, but it was just too much for me to read. It's almost, for an analogy, I'm clinging on the edge, and even a gust of wind that may have good intentions, it could knock me completely, have more of an effect on me. I'm kind of in survival mode right now, just in protection survival mode. And so I felt this huge collapse, and I had this picture in my mind of just how I've been, and maybe I can try and explain it to myself, might help. Let's say, for example, like I'm down here, and maybe, I don't know if it's fair to say, a typical mind is up here, so there's a huge gap, or a healthy mind. But then what seems to be happened is, in order for me to push myself, is almost a layer of like paper mache. This is probably a terrible analogy. I'm probably not making any sense, but there we go. Let's roll with it. There's a paper mache there, and that paper mache is kind of my small talk or my interactions, where if I was talking with somebody, they'd think, oh, he's fine. He may seem a bit odd, a bit unwell, or a bit, sometimes it can seep through. Someone can tell, he's not quite right. But in order for me to pick up the phone, speak to friends, it's that pushing. So it's that very thin, vulnerable layer that can exhibit normalcy, that can exhibit sort of healthy actions of picking up the phone, having a conversation. But what people may not know is that there's a huge sort of reaching to do those actions, and it's not a case of when my mood drops, it will drop a little bit below. When the mood drops, the paper mache disintegrates, and it hits. It's like an elevator dropping. So I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but so to other people, that it makes it tricky, because they might not have the understanding that it takes a great deal of effort to see people, close people, who are supportive of me, to speak on the phone. And now with this collapse, it's like, it makes it hard for me now to, at this present time, to see or speak to anyone, really. And it makes it more painful, because people may reach out to me and say, do you want to chat, or do you want to catch up, and talk about our days. And of course a big part of me wants to do that, because I care about those people, and of course there's a sense on many levels of obviously just natural and that human nature of connecting with somebody. But a part of me just doesn't have the energy to be able to listen and speak, to process information that someone may share with me. I just don't. With that collapse, I just don't have it in me, and so it's painful to sort of not be there for somebody who may want to talk, and I feel guilty, and also I feel like I'm dying almost by receding, not taking the phone calls, and almost witnessing the relationship sort of dry up. I'm speaking in extremes at the moment because it's only been a couple of days like this, but maybe I sensed that paper mache sort of, it was already cracking. I was already out of my depth, so it took very little to the collapse to happen. And there's almost pain in that. I don't know if it's a thought or knowing that, just witnessing the demise of whatever few connections, very, very few, less than a few that I have left. And of course, when you add the sensitivity in there, it's like a magnifying glass. It makes everything really a lot worse. So yeah, all of this is very hard to explain. Simplest thing is that I'm just in a lot of mental pain, and maybe there's some desperation there. The desperation is just to hang on to whatever little strength I have at the moment, and that little bit of strength is used for still caring about my nutrition, and still caring about trying to take care of myself in this moment, whether that's watching some ASMR or having a glass of water, or it's kind of like it's all my strength that I have to do, and all of the activities outside of that, specifically, so just talking to somebody on the phone or seeing somebody, it doesn't feel possible right now to do. I can feel by this incident, just the mind feels even more, it's taken more damage. It's more worn away. It's an analogy that when I started counselling, the first session was with, I think, the senior counsellor, and it was like an intake. So it was an hour of sort of questions about my life and jumping around timelines, and just to get a whole picture. And they used a useful analogy about how I'm feeling. I think they said something like, you just feel like your mental health's been worn away gradually, like weathered away like a rock, and rain falling. I thought, yeah, that's exactly what's happened. Of course, there's been some major incidents as well, but I think on a larger scale, it's been weathered away. I feel like it's still being weathered away, and things like this happening is just a huge. I don't know if it's too depressing to explain, but like to say, like, like sort of a few granules of the rock, gradually falling each day. So many major incidents, like huge chunks of rock have fallen, and maybe that's a bit too depressing to say, but it's hard to know as well. I feel like this, but maybe it's hard to know if this is the case, if I'm becoming more unwell, or would this continue where I go through these drops, and now the drops are more lower now, so it's even a bigger drop than before. Maybe that's possible as well, where maybe I can rebuild that kind of shell near a healthy mind, where I build myself up to take phone calls again, and to do that, which I think I've done in the past. Maybe that's also too sad to kind of think about the gap dropping more, so it's more extreme behaviour or extreme lows. maybe it's just okay to say I've had a difficult couple of days and I'm in a lot of distress. Maybe it's just okay just to keep it at that. Part of me is too tired to do a lot of analysis, and part of me is some strange way I just past caring about that. I'm doing everything I can for my health and things, and whatever the result of that is, of life, the rain weathering on me, life has on my mind, it feels like it's out of my hands largely. Of course I can do things that make it worse, which I feel like I'm doing my best to do, whether it's social contact and the little social contact I have or able to have, or going for walks, doing my best to get some fresh air and that's one thing that's probably really hard to express, is the mental pain. There's really no way words can articulate that. I think they maybe potentially come to a point where, when there's a lack of action, that may give some understanding into the severity of my health. At the moment I'm doing well, sort of, when I say paving over, I don't mean I'm hiding, but I'm sort of reaching across, still pulling in monumental effort to do the healthy things, such as meet someone at a coffee shop or take a phone call. And I feel like maybe if there's a severity of me disappearing for 4 or 5 days or not getting in touch, or my response time is less in messages, where days and days go by, then that sends a clear signal that things are difficult. But I'm trying my best for that not to happen, because that causes pain as well, because then I get thoughts and anxiety about, I don't want people to be worried about me. It feels like that's a pressure on the mind. There's lots of pressure on there already, and I'm trying to minimize it as much as possible. So right now it's just in survival mode, so just taking things in probably fair to say like 5 minutes at a time. Can't foresee tomorrow. Can't foresee the rest of the evening. So just trying to take care of the immediate. Strange, because sometimes when my mind goes back to my mum or things around that, immediately the pain quickly rises like the water level. So it's just got to be, and it's very easy to kind of slip into those thoughts, and before you know it, there's another wave of pain. And so I'm doing my best just to try and stay present, so it's not really not suppressing the thoughts and the pain, but sort of directing my attention into being present. So if anything does come up, it feels like it easily dissolves in that space of being mindful, because your attention's now open. So if it comes in that, it's almost like a drop of liquid diluting in lots of water. The bigger the amount of water, the quicker in some ways it would dilute. I think that, not sure if that's what I mean, but so I'm still sort of recovering really from things. I can feel the pain, physical pain in my head as well, actually, and there's still the pressure in my mind of the impact of the last day or two. So I'm just trying to acknowledge where I am in everything, and just getting my bearings is important. It's like an emotional compass. So I know that I'm heading in a sort of certain direction, I guess. I'm not just out at sea, because I feel like that's when destructive behavior, like binge eating and things, I'll be a lot more susceptible to that. Not having a bit of an emotional compass, so it feels like things are not as intense as they were yesterday. So that's good to acknowledge. Everything is lessened a bit, although it's still severe. Thinking about hurricanes now. So yesterday was like a category 5, maybe it's a category 3 today. So just trying to weather the storm that's still there, that's not as intense, and recovering, which just means just being extremely self-compassionate. And there's a question that is a leading expert in self-compassion. I always forget the name. Is it Kristen Neff? I think she's got a TED talk, and I follow her on Twitter. I didn't really go on it much, but sometimes I try and have a healthy sort of timeline of stuff. But I think one of the things she mentions is one of the core questions of self-compassion is asking yourself, what do you need right now? So I can't remember where I'm going with all this. I was talking about recovery, and so I'm kind of just doing that at the moment. So I didn't put too much pressure on myself to go out to the park this evening. I just when I went yesterday, it was quite busy, and quite a lot of people walking through. There's lots of entrances and walking through, and when I sat on a bench, it was like floods of people walking past on the path, and it made me a bit uneasy with the anxiety of movement of people. And so again, I tried to listen to what I needed right now, and I thought, okay, I don't need to add any more stress or anxiety, so a park may induce that. So I'm recording, but part of me thought it was a good idea and some sort of a healthy idea to record, even though it feels, I don't know, I feel a bit numb. But this will kind of get me outside, and I've run out of bread. I often have sort of salad sandwiches for lunch. That's kind of my thing I usually have, and I didn't want to put pressure on myself to have to get it in the morning tomorrow, to get it like early before it becomes hot again. Maybe it's easier for me to go in the evenings, and it's an excuse to get a bit of exercise for me. So I thought, again, recording this would give me a bit of extra incentive to go outside to do that. So I'm gonna do that shortly, to maybe try and enjoy some of the cool air. I've added some sort of ASMR playlist for me to listen to on the go, so perhaps that's something I could try and listen to. If I find something I can resonate with on there, I can try and listen to that. That might be good. I'm feeling very sort of fragile and vulnerable, that ASMR can be quite, because it's so obviously the essence of it is so gentle and soothing in that way, so it's an often go-to for me at very difficult times especially. So perhaps I can listen to that as I walk there to get some bread and upload this. And we'll see how I feel when I get back tonight. And again, just taking 5 minutes at a time, or doing what I can in this moment, and continue with that question of what do I need right now.